The Lee County Board of Commissioners Workshop meeting will convene. We'll call the meeting to order. If we could rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I'll turn it over to the county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 presentations to do this afternoon. The first one's going to be transportation priorities, and I'm going to turn it over to Robert Price to present.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. Rob Price with DOT. I'm going to try to make this abbreviated version of our normal transportation tiers presentation. So we just wanted to quickly go through our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the updates to our construction projects. We're going to go over the recommended priorities after we have rescored the projects using the current criteria. And we're going to also highlight the Midpoint Corridor and Alico Road for some additional questions of the board. Questions that we have for the board today are going to be whether you concur with our proposed transportation priorities. Do you agree with our recommendations for the Midpoint and Alico connector projects? And if there's any additional input that the board might have. So I'm just going to really blow through this. Obviously, we've got 3 projects that are in design or PD&E, project development and environment, right now. The Cape Bridge project is nearing 60% design plans. In PD&E, we've had our public hearing. Burnt Store, we've already had our public hearing as well. We're expecting PD&E documents on Burnt Store later this year. Alico Road is the first phase is at 100%. The rest of the project is nearing 60%. We're going to talk more specifically about Alico Road, so I'm going to just jump right past it. I want to highlight some of our construction projects. Obviously, as the board is aware, we've got a lot of projects that are under construction. The board just recently at our April 1st, or I'm sorry, at our previous meeting, we approved the Summerlin Colonial improvements. So that's going to start kicking off here in May. The rest of these projects have been under construction for quite some time. So we have some slides that we're highlighting each one. I'm not going to go through all the details just to try to save some time here. Three Oaks, under construction, we know. Big Carlos Pass, we got about a year left. Ortez Avenue, we've got spring 2026 as our slating. Middleton Road should be done this summer. Corkscrew Phase 2. Phase 1's done. Phase 2 is well underway. Targeted completion dates winter 2026.
Rob, a question, sorry.
Yes, sir.
The temporary signal at Corkscrew and Alico, is that still on track for April? Well, today is April 1st, actually, so.
It was supposed to be April. We have had some weather delays. I believe the date is sliding about a month, but they are on their way. We are working with them on some temporary signalization improvements that could happen there because they were having some issues with some of the utility companies. So
did they have utility issues or something?
Yeah, it was some underground utilities that had to be moved. So we're working with them. They're going to meet the timeline. They've done a lot of the legwork already.
Yeah, sooner the better, because that intersection is so dangerous late in the day or early in the morning. Because the speed of the traffic on the 2-lane road of Corkscrew is obviously really dangerous there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, so here's our typical ranking criteria slide. These are the criteria that we use to score the projects. Basically, at this point in the time of the year, we update the level of service deficiencies and projections. We go through some of the project highlights, and we factor all these into a ranking system. And here's how the Tier 1 projects shook out this year. We've updated the scores, but we haven't reshuffled any of the projects. So you'll see there's some projects that might have a higher score lower than projects that are ranked higher than them, and that's just based on previous board direction. One of the things we'll point to here is the total project cost is almost $2 billion in Tier 1. Of that, 1 billion is spent or budgeted, and there's a $986 million unfunded balance, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So I want to talk about the midpoint project. This is the number 10 ranked project on our tiers. Currently, the project was added to the tiers list in 2021. When we got our first budget estimates, it was about $194 million is what we were projecting the cost to be. So now, over the last 4 years, as we've updated some costs, some of these cost estimates have been updated as a result of our Cape Bridge project. Since we're getting more refined data, we're starting to use that to apply towards our budget projections on the midpoint. And we're looking at a $600 million project. DOT staff has been thinking back about whether or not, six-laning the midpoint bridge really is going to give us that return on investment for a $600 million investment. So one of the things that we're asking the board's concurrence with us is to let us move forward with a traffic engineering study that it's going to look at this corridor as a whole. Perhaps the study can come back and tell us maybe there's some intersection improvements at Del Prado and Veterans and at Summerlin and Colonial that can address the congestion, because our review of the intersections and of the operations of the bridge is really where your congestion points are, is at either side. So we're hopeful that we can have a traffic engineering analysis that can be run and can give us some recommendations that we can bring back to the board for further discussion later, and kind of table the midpoint project. Right now, there hasn't been any money spent on it anyway. It could stay at number 10 on our list while we work through this and bring it back to the board for some future discussion. So that was one point that we're asking the board's opinions on.
Are you guys going to take that study as far as Country Club there? I see you show it on the very far left side here. Are you going to look at the Country Club intersection as well?
We absolutely could do that.
Okay. I mean, I think that's one of the choke points as well.
Agreed.
So, I would love to see that included in whatever the scope of your study is.
Agreed. Yep. We can definitely do that. All right, any more questions on that one? If not, I'll move on to the Alico connector. So we also want to discuss the Alico connector project. Based on our current cost projections, the total funds that we need to build this project is just under $350 million. Current phasing of this project is shown on this slide. Phase 1 is the widening of the current 2-lane section from Airport Hall Road east to Green Meadow Road. The design of this $62 million phase is almost complete. We're waiting on our Army Corps permit right now. And then we'll be ready to go out to construction. Phases 2 and 3 are approaching 60% design, and our environmental permits were submitted earlier this year. Our initial track was to go out to bid on phases 2 and 3 in 2027. However, the updated price tag of $200 million and $86 million on phases 2 and 3 respectively don't fit into our budget projections until 2030. So phase 2, in our opinion, is the most critical piece of the Alico connector project, and it's going to bring that critical connection of Alico Road to Lehigh Acres and give us some critical relief on 82 and Daniels, and also on Gunnery Road. So recognizing the desire to keep phase 2 of the project on its current timeline, we started exploring some ways to adjust the phasing and what that might look like. This slide is going to display the phasing that we're proposing for the board's action. So we would come in and we would break phase 1, which is the widening of the 2-lane section, into 2 projects, phase 1A, phase 1B. 1A would basically be to build our wildlife improvements, underpass, also do our mitigation for the entire project, which is that big, I guess it's red, I'm colorblind, I apologize, the big red piece there. And we would do some of our timing-based improvements like at Wild Blue, where we have a agreement that says we would act by a certain date. We would make those improvements. We would come out to bid later this year and bring that to the board to start on phase 1A. In the meantime, the actual lane widening on Alico Road, we would hold until later and use that money to help us move forward with phase 2, which is shown here. So the next step would be to build phase 2. We could build the project in such a way as building the northbound lanes, making that connection between Alico Road and State Road 82, and potentially exploring the possibility of us actually moving forward with two-way traffic on a two-lane section while we build the southbound lanes. We can build the southbound lanes and stay out of the way. There won't be any development on the west side of the new Alico connector. So that's the way we've been looking at it. Then phase 3, on phase 2, we would have a temporary traffic signal that we would have to get FDOT's approval on. And we've had initial conversations. FDOT seems supportive. The temp signal is basically in the interim for like a 5 to 7 year improvement while we're waiting for the completion of the continuous flow intersection. Then we would come back and build phase 1B, which is actually widening Alico Road and widen Sunshine Boulevard from 82 to 23rd, as well as the continuous flow intersection. From a timing perspective and a cost perspective, this is what the two phase options would look like. Option 1 is our current original phasing, and you can see that we would have to hold construction on phases 2 and phases 3 until late in 2029. The cost of the improvement is a total of around $350 million. Option 2, our proposed rephasing of the project, we would move forward with phase 1A, and then 2 would go at the end of 2027 as it was previously scheduled, and then the temp signal as well, and then we could move forward with phase 1B and 3 starting in late 2029. This would actually get the project completed maybe 6 months faster, and we're showing that it would be at a comparable cost. So we wanted to present this to the board for your input.
Can I chime in, Chairman? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Rob, thank you for this. I just want to, I think a few of my board members were there that night. A few weeks ago, we attended Market Trends across down the street here at Harborside, and what I wanted to point out about this, we've been talking about for years, the traffic obviously on Colonial and MOK, Daniels, and Corkscrew. The other night at Market Trends, I think it was a good map for us to see. And if you got to print out your book there, look at the permits pulled last year, Cape Coral and Lehigh Acres. Cape Coral is a lot, but if you look at Lehigh Acres, people are like, oh, this development going on in Colonial and Daniels, and of course, no. All those trips are coming from Lehigh Acres. All those people that live in Lehigh Acres, all those new homes being built every year are going to Estero, Bonita, Naples to go to work, or coming to Cape Coral to go to work because of affordable housing. That's the #1 market right now in South Florida to live is Lehigh Acres. So I think when I saw that, I already knew how important this connector was to get traffic east to west, just like Cape Coral, the bridges. This is so important that we get this done faster, sooner the better, because when I saw that map the other night, and Lehigh Acres was basically, we put a red dot for every permit pulled last year. Lehigh Acres was red. Dave, you probably saw it, right? It was red. Compared to the rest of the county, it was just scattered here and there. Lehigh was a beat red. So that's why we're going to continue traffic being built backed up in Buckingham, 80, 82, all that traffic comes from Lehigh. So we're going to see that over the next 5 to 10 years. As those houses get built, we're going to see even more and more traffic. I know, Commissioner, you get it for, Buckingham, the traffic at Buckingham, I think it's, but they're all come from Lehigh. They're cutting through to 80 to go work to the interstate. So it's something that thank you, Rob, for giving us an option to get that done sooner for the funding issues.
One of the questions Rob I would have right off the bat would be, if we do find in our study that some of that we can do that with the intersection.
Any other comments?
Side of the bridge.
I think you may, yeah.
Sorry about that. With those intersections, if we find that we can do those improvements to not do so much, spend $600 million on the bridge, could we divert some of the funds towards this in the future? Is that possible? I'm just curious of that.
So the answer to your question is sure. Yeah, absolutely we can do that. The midpoint is currently unfunded today, entirely unfunded. So we would still be in the same ballpark where we have to figure out the funding side of it. But I think it would be a lot more manageable if we're trying to find funding in the amount of $50 to $75 million than $600 million, for sure.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I just want to applaud you, Rob. This is the kind of out-of-the-box thinking I've wanted to see for a long time. Like, I think this is fantastic. The idea of even getting the northbound lanes open and having us drive two ways, that's just, I love that. Thank you so much for trying to think about how we could get traffic on here as quickly as possible. I think this is a really good plan that you have here.
And Mr. Chair, even though Commissioner Hammond just said what I was going to say, as a contractor, I wanted to commend you for the creativity and logistics plan to make this come out better, the upgraded plan, to more effective use of the money, more effective use of time, phasing. I love to see that level of creativity and execution plan. I mean, that's something that gives people hope and promise to see things happen in the future and not just next year. So I just that was one of the happiest traffic meetings I've had since I got here, and I wanted to commend you and your team for that strategy. Thank you.
All right. So I think we got a consensus there. Commissioner Wayne, did you have to say something? I was sorry.
I was just going to indicate exactly what you said, based on the comments, and I certainly would support both Commissioner Malaka and Hammond's, this is exactly what I was looking for. So I think you have consensus here. We can certainly move on to the next item.
All right. Thank you, sir. So Tier 2, this slide summarizes the timelines of the Tier 2 projects. So we've updated the scoring criteria, and the results are shown here. Tier 2 has a total cost of $1.3 billion. These are projects we expect to deliver in the years 10 to 20 based on our planning discussions. The Sunshine Extension still sits atop Tier 2. The final phase of Burnt Store Road widening has moved up 4 spots to the second-rated Tier 2 project. Also, the next phase of Corkscrew Road 4-laning from Alico east to Verdana Village has moved up 4 spots based on the ranking criteria. Other projects within Tier 2 shook out the way that you see them on the list. I do want to highlight the Hickory Bridges. These bridges are in good condition, but they are nearing the end of their design life. So replacement of these structures, these 3 bridges, is critical. We've sought legislative appropriations to help fund the PD&E phases of these bridge replacements, and once we receive these funds later this year, we expect to begin the procurement of a PD&E consultant. The Hickory Bridge replacements are well suited to being delivered as a design-build project, so we look forward to bringing it forward as a design-build project due to limited right-of-way constraints. I'm just going to move on to Tier 3 unless we had any questions on Tier 2.
The only thing I wanted to just put in a plug for Burnt Store Road 4-laning, I would love to see us finish that project. I mean, I know it's in the schedule, but man, that's 5.7 miles of a road that is improved in the Charlotte County side, improved on the Lee County side, but there's this 5.7 mile gap right here in the middle where it kind of hourglasses down to the original 2-lane road. And I know the residents would love to see that road, for the sake of safety, improved and widened. And my understanding is actually we're going to be done with the PD&E this year. We could actually go out for a design-build contract. That's what you guys had shared with me previously. Like this year, we could hire the contractor to build it this year if we had the money. So somehow, if we can move this road up and figure out how to get funding for it, I hate it when we got a project that's actually ready to get started to build and we don't have the money to get it going. Is that accurate, Rob? I mean, do you have any other opinions on that? Help me explain it to him.
So we expect to have the PD&E documents approved by the end of this calendar year. Part of FDOT's process was to also develop a design-build criteria package so that we're at 60% design, basically, when you get your PD&E documents. Having that design-build criteria package basically puts this in what FDOT would consider shovel-ready. So you go out for a design-build contract. We award a contract. The design team comes in with the contractor, and they start working on the design, and we move forward with construction once the design is complete. So it's it's just not funded. Like you said, the only hiccup is we don't have the money to build it.
So Rob, just for clarity, what time frame would we be at? Is it June, September? What does that look like? As far as being ready and we're just lacking the funds?
Yeah, I think this time next year, we'd be right around the time where we would have the design build criteria package and be ready to consider going to procurement if the funding was there.
So next April, next May of 25, of 20, of
26.
26.
Yes, sir.
26, sorry, yes, 26. So about a year from now, okay. The other thing, just to add on to Commissioner Hammond, I agree with Commissioner Hammond, but in the same token, Charlotte was able to move forward. They did a special assessment to get this road done, so that's the way they got it done. Additional tax they gave to put the road in, so that's why they're so much further than we are.
Question, Rob, how comfortable you are with this 297 budget? I mean, it seems staggering to have that much money in that short of a roadway compared to Alico Road, 3 phases for 8 years versus a 5-mile stretch of Fern Store Road to be almost comparable in price. Why is that so heavy?
There's some bridges, there's some pathways. It's a big project. I feel pretty comfortable that our cost estimate, because it's developed by the FDOT team as they've gone through the PD&E phase. I would say that it's pretty solid cost estimate.
So to replace the Cape Coral Bridge, right, for 360 or
Yeah.
300 is 5 miles of Burnt Store Road, just feels out of balance. But I'm sure it's right. I just wish it was a shorter path to get there too. We've been talking about finishing that road for the last 35 years.
That 10 million that you see in the spent and budgeted, that's been set aside for right-of-way. So County Lands is working already on trying to identify and secure right-of-ways that we're going to need for pond sites and various other things. So that's what that 10 million represents.
Well, it's a hurricane evacuation route. I mean, I know we all want it. I just can't believe how much that line item is.
I guess, one thing I would love to ask, are there any ways that we could finance that? Are there design builders who do financing? I mean, I guess technically you want to have some sort of revenue source that would pay back the financing. I don't know where we're at on our revenue sources. I know it's connected to the corridor that Veterans in the Midpoint Bridge is on, so I imagine we're going to use surplus tolls or some sort of tolls in there as part of a funding source. I mean, is there any way we could finance it and get it under construction once it becomes shovel-ready?
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I think that if that's the will of the board, we can come back to you in a timely manner to tell you what options there are available for this road, potential options for the road. I don't know if we can give you that answer today, but I think we can investigate different options and bring that back.
I mean, I would like to see that.
Okay.
I certainly support that. That was part of our strategic planning, was finding alternate paths of funding to accelerate projects. I think we all agreed on that. That's a good point. Thank you.
It's definitely worth pursuing. Any other items on tier 2?
All right. So I will move to tier 3. So this slide reflects the tier 3 priorities. These projects represent the 20-plus year projects and are valued at slightly more than $1 billion. This includes some additional phases of Corkscrew Road, an overpass over Santa Barbara and Veterans, and some bridges that are also nearing the end of their design life. DOT is currently working with the grants team to try to fund the bridge replacement projects using various grant opportunities and legislative appropriations. Did you have any specific questions on tier 3 or comments? All right.
I'm good.
Pardon me, the Corkscrew 6-lane 3 Oaks project seems relatively inexpensive compared to the ones we were just talking about. I know that's a lot of congestion in that area. Is there what opportunities, or how far along is that? Have we done anything to plan or design anything on
It
that?
is in no state of
No stage.
development at this point. We're looking at 20-plus years. That area was just recently widened by FDOT. This is a future project to kind of tie it in from Three Oaks to I-75 to just kind of marry the improvements.
Right?
I think the congestion issues kind of start further west there on Corkscrew and not so much in that stretch between Three Oaks and the interstate. We have talked with some development projects there about some turn lane extensions at the intersections to try to help with some operational improvements, but those are kind of always discussions that are in flux.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So the last slide, we had was shout out to community engagement. You can go to our DOT website if you want to get any information on our projects, and follow us on our YouTube page where we do have our award-winning On the Road with DOT segment where we highlight different areas of DOT and our operations. With that, I come back to our questions. Sounds like we got some of the answers we need on the proposed transportation priorities, but we'll open up for any more comments. And I think we got board consensus on Midpoint and the LECO connector projects. So we just kind of open up if there's any additional questions or comments for us to consider.
Any comments or other input?
I mean, the only question I'd ask Mr. County Manager is, so I appreciate the conversation and the enthusiasm from the board to go ahead and look at alternatives on that Burnt Store Road. You know, since we made the decision on, not made the decision, but it seems like there's a consensus on the Midpoint Bridge 6 laning to kind of take an alternative look at that instead of widening it out to 6 lanes. Do we entertain the idea of moving that midpoint down to Tier 2 and moving the Burnt Store up to Tier 1?
We could certainly do that. Yeah, that would not be an issue. That's what you choose to do.
I mean, because that's what I'm hearing today. We're not ready to take on a $600 million cost on the midpoint, but we are willing to look at intersection improvements on either side of it to help alleviate some of the choke points. Great. So can we move that $600 million out of Tier 1 and move the Burnt Store project, which I think we're all interested in seeing get moved along quicker and expedited, move that into Tier 1 so that everybody feels good that the projects that we feel a sense of urgency around are in Tier 1.
And if I may make a suggestion, if you don't mind, Commissioner Malika, do you have a?
Sure.
Go ahead. Okay.
The suggestion I would make is you could leave midpoint in Tier 1 until we can come back to you with some alternatives, because you still may want to do those alternatives. But at the same time, you could still put in Burnt Store, you can move that to Tier 1.
Okay.
I mean, so I would suggest leaving them both in so that we can come back and give you the alternatives for midpoint, and then we can give you the potential funding solutions or opportunities that there may be for Burnt Store.
Okay, well, I mean, that sounds like a good recommendation, just putting Burnt Store up in Tier 1 then and leaving midpoint alone.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we earmark half the money for midpoint if we think it's going to be value engineered to something less, and use that money otherwise. You're accomplishing the same thing. If we don't have the money, it doesn't matter how much we put in the column. Doesn't have any money for yet. But yeah, that makes sense.
So if I can recap it for everyone, if that's okay. So the illegal connector recommendation you're good with.
Yep.
Midpoint corridor study, you want us to look at a study to include all of Colonial all the way up to Country Club on that study.
Yep.
You want us to move Burnt Store into Tier 1. And
Correct.
finally, you want us to look for any potential funding sources, alternate funding sources for the final section of Burnt Store Road.
Yes.
Okay,
I think you summarized what we want.
perfect.
All right.
I think that takes
Thank you.
care of the first presentation. Second presentation is also by Rob. This is the school speed zone video enforcement. Rob?
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. So a few months ago, DOT was directed to bring back an ordinance to approve video enforcement of school-reduced speed zones. As staff worked to bring the item back for formal approval, we identified several items which require additional board direction. On the agenda today is a summary of the state law, including some topics that require additional board input, some discussion of the applicable school speed zones, and finally some discussion on how the board wishes to procure the services. The questions we are seeking input from the board include which school zones to incorporate, also how to handle the appeal process, how to procure the services, and some direction on implementation and timing.
Chairman, if I could, sorry.
Sure.
Rob, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have this after 3:30. I had Lamstead staff and commissioners in my office scheduled earlier today. We pushed them back to 3:30, so they're waiting. I'm gonna try to get with them real quick. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we have a quorum here with the other three guys here. So if I could just say thank you, Rob, for bringing this. I just want to say one quick thing. I think I'm the one that brought this up a few months ago, and thank you, staff, for bringing this. Obviously, safety of our children and pedestrians is the most important thing to me. Brought it up so we can learn more about it, talk about it. I've learned a lot in the last few months about it. Something I've learned recently about this enforcement is I wasn't aware of when I first brought it up was I guess some other counties have dropped this issue because of after they implied it. It's actually, my impression was, when I first got the information, was going to be people getting fined doing the school crossing times at 8 a.m., 3 p.m. at release time and all that stuff, as we did crossing guards in the past or anything. I guess the way it's actually installed, it's actually all day long while the school's in session. So I wasn't aware of that. I guess the Manatee County, they did that. Rob can probably go over the history of that. I'm not going to get to that, but they've actually decided, I guess, to pull it out now because people are getting fined throughout the day when the kids are in class. My initial goal was to provide safety for the children going to school and coming from school, that real critical time. I guess I've learned also that that is negotiable with the vendors to do like an hour, 30 minutes, 2-hour blocks in the morning or in the afternoon. That's negotiable, I guess, the vendors, if they want to do that or not. But me personally, I could not support the all-day thing because this is, the kids are in class, they're safe. If somebody chooses to speed, that's where law enforcement, I think, should make that decision. They have speed cameras out there, and I think, I guess, Manatee and other counties have gotten really challenged on this, or they have a lot of complaints about it. So the effort is obviously a good thing to provide safety for our children. We don't want people speeding anywhere in the county, but I hate to start pushing that envelope with the speed cameras all day long, and next thing you know, you can be lobbied to do it throughout the county. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents on it. I just wanted to get my 2 cents there, saying, sorry if it works. Hopefully it works out, but if it doesn't work out, then, I'm sorry I brought it up if it doesn't work out, but I'm only one vote. But I'll make sure everybody's aware of that, because I thought at first, my first glances, this was only for the 8 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning to 2, 3 o'clock, not all day long, and I think I learned a lot with this process. So Rob can go in that. He's informed me a lot on it lately, so you guys have fun with that. So sorry, but I got to go back across the street. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I'll continue here. So
Sure.
in 2023, the legislative session, House Bill 657 was passed, which amended Florida Statute 316.1895 regarding school speed zones. The amendment adds language to permit video enforcement of school speed zones. To implement the school speed zone video enforcement, we will need to approve a new ordinance via public hearing. We also are required to create a public awareness campaign prior to that implementation. We'll also be required to design and permit the new signs while also updating any outdated signage already in place. One key aspect of the law that we wanted to highlight for the board is the enforcement timeframes, like the commissioner was just talking to. The state law permits enforcement in the morning AM drop-off time period while the flashers are active at the reduced speed limit. Also in the PM peak hour pickup time while the flashers are active at the reduced speed limit, as well as during the day between the AM and PM at the regularly posted speed limit. So the state law also provides guidance that violations of 10 or more miles per hour over the controlling speed limit can be assessed a uniform traffic citation. The citation carries a $100 civil penalty. We've included the pie chart at the bottom here to reflect how the fines are divvied up. $20 goes to the state general fund, $5 goes to the School Guard Crossing Recruitment and Retention Fund. $3 goes to the FDLE Criminal Standards and Training Fund. $12 to the local school district for security and safety improvements to improve student walking conditions. And the remaining $60 goes to the county. Of this $60, a vendor will take out their operating costs, which could vary depending on the selected vendor. Uniform traffic citations are required to be issued by a deputized individual. So the county will also have to share some of the funding with the sheriff's department to issue the citations, review and issue the citations. We also need to establish an appeal process and to address the challenges to citations. State law suggests the use of your local code enforcement board, which in our case would be the hearing examiner's office. We're seeking direction from the board as to whether appeals are handled by the hearing examiner or whether you would prefer that we reach out and establish an outside special magistrate to handle appeals. This slide shows the 17 reduced speed school zones on county maintained roads. There's a few I want to highlight, but basically we have 17 locations on unincorporated Lee County roads, and 2 of these are in the city of Fort Myers. The school itself is in the city of Fort Myers, so we want to specifically highlight that to get some direction from the board. James Stevens Elementary on the left-hand side is in the city of Fort Myers. Marsh Avenue on the western boundary of that school is an unincorporated Lee County maintained roadway that has a school speed zone on it. There's also city maintained streets that have school speed zones. So if the board's direction is for us to move forward and implement here, our understanding would be we would just be implementing on the county maintained Marsh Avenue. We would not be implementing on the city streets. We could exclude this school completely if that was the choice of the board as well. On the right-hand side is Tanglewood Elementary, also located inside the city limits. However, the roads leading up to Tanglewood Elementary are in unincorporated Lee County. The county line is basically that north-south canal just on the west side of the school. The blue road there, the Manchester Parkway, the county road. But this also has a unique element as well because there's a school speed zone on McGregor Boulevard, which is a state road. The state law permits us to install these on state roadways and collect the monies as long as we get a permit from FDOT. I've had the conversation with FDOT, and that's the process for them to approve them on a state facility. So those are the 2 questionable locations that we wanted to highlight that show the schools in the city. School zones are on county road or state road, and ask the board for some direction on how to handle. So we're also seeking direction from the board on how you wish for us to procure the services of the vendor. Our 2 options are to find another municipality that's implemented a contract and piggyback off of that contract. This would take us about 2 to 4 months to bring a contract back to the board for award and ordinance approval. Or we could, if the board prefers, we could put out a request for proposals, which is probably a 6 to 9 month process. Both of these options mean we won't be ready to implement by the start of next school year. So we were also questioning whether the board wishes us to implement this as soon as possible, or you want us to coincide with the start of a school term. First of the school year, middle part of the school year, we're just seeking some direction on that. So some implementation, a slide on implementation. Basically, our next steps would be to bring back an ordinance to the board for adoption after we get the direction today. We would go to procurement, come back, and go into the design and permitting phase. Then we have the public awareness campaign before implementation finally starts, which I believe, like in Cape Coral, their public awareness campaign ended yesterday, and they started enforcing today. So that's an interesting side note. So that brings us back to our question slide. Do you have any direction on which school zones to include? Also, how does the board wish us to handle the appeals process? And do you prefer we piggyback to speed this up, or do you want us to go out to RFP? And do you have any preference on implementation timeline?
Chairman, if I may, I'd love to share some
Sure.
thoughts. First, I want to just highlight and share a tremendous amount of gratitude to the Lee County Sheriff's Office. I actually drop my daughter off at school every morning, and there are deputies in the median, there are deputies waiting down the street. They are monitoring that school zone in front of North Fort Myers High and the elementary school that's also there on the same Orange Grove, the same road, every single morning, without fail. And they are enforcing that speed zone, and I can't thank them enough for the work that they're doing to try and keep our kids safe. I actually would prefer not to see them replaced with cameras. I think they're doing a fantastic job as law enforcement officers. So for me, at this time, I don't want to pursue this any further. I'm happy with what our law enforcement's doing.
I certainly agree with Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Pendergrass, and moreover, having been up in New York for a while, I could tell you, even the blue state that we're up here in, people hate the cameras. So I'm not in favor of this at all.
Speaking for myself, when Commissioner Pendergrass made the recommendation to investigate this as a former police officer, of course, you always want to give him some credence with that subject, but the more I hear about this, the more Big Brother-ish it seems, and the less interested I am in pursuing this as well.
Mr. Greenwell?
There you go.
I got it. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
it seems like we have a consensus, so I think we all feel the same way. And Mr. Hammond, I think you made everybody's decision pretty easily. Dropping your daughter off every morning, if you see that, that means a lot. So I think they are doing a great job, and it makes sense. So that's my 2 cents.
All right.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. We'll bring
No problem.
that item back for you all to concur at a later board meeting. So the next agenda item is the budget development. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Wynn.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is the first workshop we'll have of several on the budget development for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And so we're very, what I want to impress to the board is we're very early on in the process. And really, this is an opportunity just to talk about some of the things that we know we're going to be faced with during the budget process, and then ask the board and board members, do you have any particular things you want us to look at as we go through the budget, or incorporate or bring back further information to you about. I'm just going to jump right in, because this typically starts off with information that we receive from the Florida Economic and Demographic Research Agency, which does revenue estimating for the Florida legislature and for the state of Florida. And each year they do an estimate for each county. It's done on a mass basis, but it's done for each county of what they think the increase in the tax base could be. So that revenue estimating conference met in early March, and the results were distributed mid last month. And so what this shows is a couple things. One, if you go from 2025, which is this coming year, 25-26 forward, you can see they do 2 estimates a year. They did one last July 2024, and then they did one earlier March, early July 2024. You can see in orange, and then earlier this March in white, off-white. And you can see that the estimate from last July to this March has reduced some, so it's not quite as rosy. Now, something I want to talk to the board about, and I think you all know, is that this is done on a mass basis. So, they do seek information from individual counties, but it's primarily an indication of mass appraisal and what they think is going to happen throughout the state. I did talk to the property appraiser briefly a couple weeks ago, and he really didn't have any better information for me. I think he's got some data points that he's still got to go through. So he can't tell me, oh, that 5.8% is, we think we'll do much better than that, or anything else. So, but what you can see is that the projection has gone down some. If you look at the last couple of years in 2023, before Hurricane Ian, so 2023, that's the estimate at January 1st, 2023. We had an estimate before Ian hit in September of about 11.9% increase in the tax base. Ended up being 7.1% that January 2023. So it still went up, but it likely would have gone up much more. And then last year, you can see the initial estimate was 6.2%, and we ended up at 12.8%. So, and I think that was an indication of, things coming back, of the rebuild and properties coming back on the tax roll. But with all that said and done.
Oh, Pete, before we leave that
Yes.
chart, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So, Pete, looking at this chart, is it fair to say, so for 2025, when they came out in March, the Revenue Estimating Conference went ahead and cut their estimate of property value increase by 2%. So they're not feeling as confident about 2025. And then if you look at 2026, initially last year they were thinking it was going to be maybe in 2026 an 8.4%, but they cut that one way down to in half, 4.10%. So they're really seeing maybe some warning signs potentially for 2026 as well. Is that what I'm reading?
Potentially, Commissioner, this is a starting point in our budget development. So while we look at these numbers, especially in the outer years, we don't put as much stock in them as maybe the current year we're in. But yeah, that's the indication thus far.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
No problem.
In all the projections, Commissioners, the further out you get, the lower the projection is, the forecast is, because it's too far out. But I can't explain to you why that's 4.1%, why that's so low.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my own 2 cents is I just think there's a lot of concerns, a lot of conversation, and a lot of concerns just generally over the whole concept of tariffs. So I think that is giving a lot of uncertainty, and I think there's a lot of concern. Just will it impact so many different areas and slow down properties coming back?
And Mr. Chairman, if I may also, I'll just share, from the real estate agents I talk with too, I think they're seeing that the inventory of homes for sale on our market has increased exponentially. I think there was a point in 2022 or whatever after the pandemic where we might have gotten down to as low as like less than 2 weeks of inventory on market. And now they're saying it could be upwards of 9 months of inventory. So it's been a huge swing. They're even admitting that now it's a buyer's market as opposed to a seller's market here locally. And so I kind of wonder, my speculation is the Revenue Estimating Conference taking that in order for sellers to sell their homes, they're going to have to cut the prices, which would then obviously lower the values that we'd be looking at. So I think that's what they're maybe speculating, that we're going to see price reductions on the real estate sales market. But that was my thought.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, Commissioner Allen. That's kind of the overall thought. A lot of areas in Florida have excess inventory, as they would call it, which obviously comes, if you have to sell, you're going to take a discount. So there's concerns in that, and the recovery, certainly there's concerns, at least when I've talked to many realtors, that the recovery is going to be slower, and it could be either further complicated because if costs continue to escalate, because of any type of import of anything, that'll just slow down the recovery as well. So I think both factors are in play. What we don't know is exactly what properties are going to continue because they're in the process, and that's what's really hard. I was talking with Matt about just the projection, and as Pete said, it's a little too hard to predict at the moment. It's only when we were doing this in March, so I think it's to be determined.
And then commissioners, what this shows is your actuals over the last 10 or 15 years, and then that projection dropped in, Commissioner Hammond. You can see the 5.8% would be the lowest it's been, recognizing the tax base is higher, so to gain that percentage takes a little more work, but that's the lowest it's we've seen in a while. I will say that the property appraiser has typically, or these estimates, the June 1st estimate usually is, I can't remember when it wasn't higher than what the state had estimated. I'll put it that way. And then, just for your purposes, every 1% equals $4.9 million.
Thanks, Pete. I basically, when I did my review with Pete, I thought that was important for all the commissioners to know. That 1% is another $5 million, because when you get to the next slide, you'll see the deficit that will run.
So, commissioners, there are things that we have discussed in the past. You all have approved or said you wanted to see done, and so we know there's certain things that we need to incorporate into the budget, and I kind of show it on this page in total. The board has approved a growth plan for emergency medical services, and so it has a staffing plan over the next 5 years that the board has seen and approved for not only the new stations that we're going to be opening up as we build them, but for additional employees in stations that exist. I'll show in the next slide, we have a slight deficit in the general fund, structural deficit, so expenses slightly above revenues. And we received a loan from the state after Ian in 2023 of $25 million, which we can use for operating purposes. And I'll show on the next slide how we're using that. And Commissioner Wayne was very helpful in getting that from a 2-year loan to a 10-year loan. So it's not due until 2033. So we do have that in reserves, and we will be using it to help with our reserves. We were able to manage our health fund medical costs for several years without any increases, but we are going to have to increase investment in our medical fund to pay for employee health care costs. So that's something that we need to incorporate into the upcoming budget. And then the medical examiner expansion is going to be done, the expansion of their facility, not in 25-26, but 26-27. So that's something that we know we have to incorporate and we have to pay for. Right now, it looks like we're going to have to get into debt for that, and I'll come back to the board with some options on that as we move forward. We're going to focus on the general fund for this presentation, but as you see, the general fund for this year's budget, the budget we're in, which we approved last September, you can see what that ended up being. We ended up showing or estimating reserves at reserves being $93 million. When we closed out all the books late last year, that number ended up being $97 million. So we were to the good on that, and we still have that $25 million from loan from the state that's not due for another 8 years. So as I said in the previous slide, I don't know if we would be able to eliminate the deficit over the next, a goal should be to eliminate that deficit within the next 2 years, and I'll show you kind of what our projection looks like on that.
So, Pete, before you leave that
Yeah.
slide, I just wanted to share some thoughts, Commissioners. I was really hoping this slide was an April Fool's joke, because if you're looking at it, we had a $5 million deficit last year, and the $5 million deficit has now grown to a $13.1 million deficit, and we haven't even done the budgeting, like we haven't even heard from the constitutionals what they're requesting, and so I really, truly was hoping this was an April Fool's joke. It's clearly not, and I would love to see us figure out a way to not grow the deficit this year, and really would love to see us pass a balanced budget this year. I mean, my goal would be, as we're set, and that means we're going to have some tough conversations, but I don't want to do what Washington does, where we just kind of throw everything on the backs of future generations and we don't balance our budget. I think we need to get rid of the deficit.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Commissioner Hammond. I think we're all, on the same page there. I've always had a mantra is the pendulum has to swing both ways. So like obviously when revenues are good, we certainly do what we can. When revenues certainly slide the other way, we have to adjust accordingly, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Commissioners, when I show in the forecast, you will see it balance out over the next couple of years, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like this when I came in here, that last year's budget was minus $5 million, and to see it triple is unnerving, I mean, that's a wake-up call to me. In our strategic planning session, I mean, we called out for trying to cut our budgets in our departments, and, I made a mention of it, wouldn't it be great if everybody could find 5% in their current budgets to reduce them? And it sounds like we need to be looking at those want to and need to costs right now. I mean, and look at some of these priorities to get that in line. I think this is the kind of economy that we've all been through before, and it's never easy to look at spending less than you did before, because it's reality for cash flow to look at this. So I think some of these things need to be examined and go down in greater detail. We have an amazing health care plan here. I mean, it's incredibly high level, good coverage, I don't know how much of this, these other priorities just need to get looked at again. Big picture here. I don't think I wouldn't feel responsible moving forward with a deficit that big from the outset. It feels uncomfortable to me. So I hope we can improve on that.
And Commissioners, just for your purposes, that 13 million, if the tax base comes in at 8.5%, then that 13 million would go away.
Is it at what? What percent?
So if instead of 5.8%, the increase in the tax base is 8.5%, that 13 million would go away.
I think you're saying it backwards, Pete. 5.8% is what you have at the top of the chart there.
Correct.
And
So if
we
the tax
need to go
base
to
came in
8.
at 8.5%, that 13 million would go away.
Oh,
Oh, I see
that's
what
the
you're
break-even
saying.
point on the rate we'd have to make to keep this current expense. So, but this is what's projected as the 5.8.
Correct.
We'll call the property appraiser and get, no, I'm joking.
No, and Denny Grimes mentioned this at Market Watch the other day. There's going to be kind of a catch a falling star real estate correction that we have to be cognizant of. And I've seen just houses in my neighborhood that were $700,000 last week or $550 this week. I mean, people are starting to make real life changes and not just raising prices every year. I think we're just going to have that reality check to cope with,
Yeah, Commissioners, I wish we had one more, and usually Pete gives it to us every year, but it's a pie chart. We're going to need partners to help us in the constitutional offices with the budget this year, with knowing that we're looking at a deficit now that's going to triple to 13.1 million. We're going to need partners in the constitutional offices, and I'll tell you why, because if you go to legov.com and you download the budget book for last year and you look at that budget book, we always get a pie graph. And so imagine the pie, half of the pie, fully half of the pie that is the general fund, it's an $800 million fund, goes to fund the 5 constitutional offices. You think about it, the commissioners and our county manager and county administration do not set that budget. We don't have discretion over that budget. We don't have authority over that budget. We don't even prepare that budget. That budget is proposed to us. If you look at another quarter of that pie, I would call that, I guess, mandatory spending, for lack of a better terminology. It's things like paying off our debt service, making sure we pay our bills, that kind of stuff. And then if you look at the final quarter of the pie, like 25% of it is basically what we run the whole county off of. So out of like 800 million bucks, we really only get 200 million that Dave and I believe us as county commissioners have real true discretion over. And so we can cut and cut and cut our people a lot, but the truth is, if we wanted to really make a dent, I think we need to reach out to our partners who own the other half of the pie and ask them to help us out as well.
And Commissioner, I just put up what the general fund breakout looks like. Okay, Commissioners, and then this is just a reminder of what the EMS plan is. As you can see, for 25-26, $2.4 million investment for additional positions, and you can see where the positions are. And then, as Commissioner Hammond was alluding to, this is the breakout of the general fund between constitutionals, between operating departments in the general fund, and then the lower part is primarily joint costs. So, Commissioners, this is the projection that I know it's small. This is the projection that we showed the board at the end of last year. So that you saw this during your September budget hearings. And what I've done here is what we've done is we've re-estimated based on that 5.8% and any other adjustments based on how revenues are coming in. We've re-estimated the revenues. On the expense side, I haven't done anything on the expense side. I've kept it the same. There's some things that'll move around, but this is just for purposes of showing you what happens in a projection based on flowing in those numbers, the 5.8%, then 4.1, then 5.2, and et cetera. And you can see the current budget is 686. And a 5% fund-wide, you would have $717 million of revenues and $730 of expenses. The following year, 4.1%, then you'd start to come back into balance. $741 million of revenues, $746 million of expenses, and then you'd basically be balanced after that when you're talking in an $800 million fund, a couple million. That's you're balanced. You can find that. So that just kind of shows you. This is a very rough projection at this point. We don't have the budget's input, but this shows you kind of what happens at the current projection from the State Revenue Estimating Conference. And then these are the upcoming workshops as well as the tax base estimate. So we'll have the the workshop on the capital improvement program, major maintenance on May 20th. We received the preliminary tax base from property appraiser Caldwell on June 1st. First draft of the continuation budget, June 17th. And then we have time for second, even third draft in August, and then your budget hearings in September. And then the question, is there anything else you'd like to add or see in the budget development?
Just some overall comments. Obviously we all have had this, presented to us. I mean, I think, to Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Mullica's comments, and certainly I think the board in general, a couple of things noteworthy. Obviously, we need to see where we end up. 5.8 is a historical low, and I don't know that we're going to be there. I think it's important to remember that 24 December is what the cutoff is. So as we see inventories continue to grow, let's understand it's sales that took place. The other good thing from a cash flow point of view is we have some debt that's fallen off. Is it year after next, Pete?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part, Commissioner.
We have some debt that's fallen off. Is it the year after next?
Yeah, yes, our last debt payment is, in the general fund is October 1st, 2026, but I believe we've got that covered in the upcoming budget, so we won't have any debt for 26, 27.
Yeah, so that's $15 million. So we had accumulation of debt that we were paying down, so that'll be there. So I think we're going to have to really be nimble. I agree with everything that everyone said. I think we're going to need to look at expenses real hard, some tough conversations. But I also thought it was imperative to understand that the cutoff is December 24. Every percent is $5 million, so that 13, if it went up 1%, is 8. If it goes up 2%, it's 3. So, let's just understand that. And I just think we need to really be prepared. And I've always used the mantra, the pendulum has to swing both ways. So if revenues comes in lighter, we're going to have some real tough conversations across the board with everybody. And that's the unfortunate or fortunate thing about working with us is during good times, we try to do what we can. And we've done that over the last couple of years. I think a lot of people understand that. And I think we're going to have to adjust accordingly. I just would hesitate to everybody that I think the 5.8 would be a historical low going back to the recession times. And I don't know that we're going to end up there, but I certainly think, I don't know we'll achieve the 8.5 that we need to get to. Just some comments to think about in the back of your head. Any other questions or anything for Pete?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, sure.
I just want to make sure I have everything that you guys have asked us to do. You want us to work out of the structural deficit this year. So come in regardless of what the property value increase is, work off of that specific number and adjust it as we go, including through June when we get the preliminary tax base. Also, you spoke about talking to the constitutionals. Last year we sent a letter to the constitutionals from the chair. Is that what we're looking at doing again? Asking the chair to write a letter to the constitutionals? It was pretty much, we had decided the board had decided to stay within a 5% increase and had asked the constitutionals to do that. That came out of our last year's workshop. And so the letter was consistent of that, just if we could work collectively to come in at 5%. Well, that was last year. This year, we would obviously change it based on this direction, but that was last year's motion. So I don't know yet. We would have to work through that. We don't know. We're going to have to readjust this based on not having a structural deficit. So we would have to come back to you on that. But I think the motion, what we're asking is, once we do that, is how do you want to work with the constitutionals?
I'll just make this point, and it won't make me popular, right? But that's okay. I'm here for the people. I'm looking out for them. I think the people who own half the budget, half of that pie, need to share in some of whatever cut we have to do to get rid of the deficit. It cannot be all on the $200 million that funds the county departments.
And as we work through that, we'll work the letter and bring it back to the board for direction.
I have no problem with that concept. I think the letter needs to be specific. I certainly am the liaison to the sheriff's office. I meet with them monthly. I will certainly make sure I communicate where we are in the budget process.
Chairman, if I may, I would like to agree with both of you that they need to work with us this year for sure. And we should
absolutely
have dedication to be a balanced budget no matter what.
The same tide floats all boats, right? I mean, and if it makes it more manageable, I would offer, if it's a 2-year payback on the capital loan and not if we're trying to accelerate debt payoff while we're reducing revenues, that's going to be 4 times as hard to get. I would be open-minded to a 2-year payback on the debt as we're adjusting to these unknown economy things. I think we might be trying to overachieve if we try to pay everything off early and then cut the budget at the same time. That's going to compound the problem. So I would be open-minded to a 2-year payback instead of a 1-year payback if that, I don't know how much impact that makes, but
To run a couple scenarios for the board.
just for everyone's consideration, that we just got to be realistic.
We'll run a couple scenarios for the board and for you to give us further direction. Okay. I don't think we have any other, Commissioner, Mr. Chair?
No, I think you summarized it well. You know, I appreciate all the comments. I think we all are in concurrence that we need to obviously live within our means and certainly not have a deficit, and that certainly seems the will of the board. So we'll communicate that. We'll look for you to write the appropriate letter, and I certainly will communicate that very loudly, you know, to the sheriff's area as well. Any other items, gentlemen? It's been a long day. I appreciate everyone's indulgence. With that in mind, we'll call for an adjournment.